Good morning, everybody. Wisconsin's 73rd Assembly District Representative Angela Stroud is our very special guest today, Thursday, October 16th, 2025. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you are watching DrydenWire Live. Today's show is being streamed on DrydenWire's Facebook page and on our YouTube channel, so however you may be watching, thank you for joining us. If you miss any of this conversation, no worries. You can watch the full recording on our website later today simply by visiting DrydenWire.com. With that, we welcome today's guest for the first time on our show, Wisconsin's 73rd and most northern Assembly District, Representative Angela Stroud. Angela, good morning. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I have a lot to get to, of course. This is the first time you're on, so I want to get to know your history and your time in office and what you're working on. But I Googled your name about 15 minutes before we started, what I typically do. And I saw something, and I need to confirm it. So I'm going to, right out of the gate, I got to ask you this question, because it's going to set the tone for this whole conversation. Is it true that your favorite movie is Spaceballs?
It is true. That is my favorite movie. It's the movie I've definitely seen more than any other. I probably know every line from it. Yeah, I love it.
Oh my goodness, that is awesome. I guess I don't really have I don't know. I've never really thought about favorite movie, but if there is a list that I have of a top 10, I think that would probably even be my top 5. I've seen that movie no less than 300 times, and my friends and I used to quote it all the time. There's so many great one-liners in there.
Especially the one I'm surrounded by. I think about that one a lot.
Oh my goodness, that is great. And I just found out, I don't know if you know, that there was going to be another one I think is getting made.
I was being interviewed, and someone told me that there's a sequel that, when they were interviewing me, that had just been announced like the day before, and I was just like totally floored. I'm definitely going to go see that.
I didn't know that until this morning, so I must have seen the article that you were talking about. Yeah. I hope Rick Moranis comes back, because he made like Lord Darkhelmet. He made that movie. It was so good.
Yeah. I don't know who will replace John Candy. He's
Barth. Right. Yeah, that is interesting. You know, another great Rick Moranis movie, Strange Brew. That was another classic from the back in the day. All right, so we could talk about movies for 45 minutes, but we probably shouldn't. Good morning, Carol. Good morning, Brian, that are tuning in and watching. So again, since this is the first time you've been on, let's get to know you a little bit. So tell us about you. Where were you born and raised? Let's kind of start there.
Sure. I was born and raised in McAllen, Texas, which is about as far south as you can get from Ashland. It's on the Mexican border, 10 miles from Reynosa, Mexico, south Texas, close to the coast. And my mom's family actually has roots in Wisconsin. They were from Eau Claire originally and had to find a really warm place after my grandpa broke his back in World War II. So they found just about the warmest place you could find, and that's where I grew up.
Oh, my goodness. Now, is that the humid heat or the dry heat? I can't remember.
Oh, it's super humid. Yeah, it's close to the coast, so it's humid and very hot.
Oh, perfect. And when did you end up? How long were you in Texas?
I was born and raised there. I went to school there, college, and then I went to grad school in Austin. And I found my way north because I got a job at Northland College as a sociologist, and I totally fell in love. I moved here on June 1st, 2012. And that first summer was just like Northwoods magic. And I was just like, oh my God, why would anyone ever leave this place? It's like absolute heaven. The lake, the beaches, the forests. It is like my dream come true.
When you were in Texas, I want to back up quick. You went to college there?
Yeah.
For what?
Undergrad, I did sociology. And then I totally fell in love with that discipline. And so I took a year off. I coached basketball. My big choices in life were, do I want to be a basketball coach or do I want to be a professor?
I played basketball. That's actually, believe it or not, that actually sounds like a difficult decision, because both those sound pretty awesome.
I mean, I know what my gifts are, and they are persuading, like getting people fired up about stuff. And I loved coaching. I was good at it. I loved it. Basketball was my life when I was younger. But I really love books, and I love thinking, and I love trying to like solve problems. That's what I love the most.
So when you moved to Ashland, was it for a job? You said it was at the college there.
Yeah.
Did you move there just for that?
Yeah, I
Like there
moved
was an
there because
opening, and you're like, hey, I guess I'll just go to the other side of the country.
I mean, yeah, higher ed it's hard to get a job when you have a PhD. There aren't that many jobs, and so,
What?
well, if you want to be a professor, yeah, the openings are few, and
Why?
um, there's just not as many people going to college anymore. There's just not as many openings as there are people who want that job. It doesn't pay well, but it's extremely satisfying. I mean, it was my dream job. I loved it very much. It was, you get to think and read and talk and write, and like you have the freedom to just kind of do what you want intellectually, and that's a total gift.
And what year was that? You said 2012?
2012.
2012. And so what did you do there? What did you teach there?
Sociology. I taught a
Oh, there you
whole
go.
yeah, I taught a lot of different classes, intro theory, sociology of community. That was my favorite. Helping people understand what community is and why it's so critical in our lives. And yeah, it was so fun. The students were amazing. You got to really teach in small classes. It was awesome.
Uh, Forget my ignorance. What is sociology? Like, what's the when you went for sociology? Obviously, you had just said that you wanted to either be a professor or you wanted to potentially coach basketball. But outside of teaching sociology, what field does that typically go into, and what is it?
Yeah, great questions. I appreciate the questions. So, what it means is it's the systematic study of society. So when you do sociology, you're learning things like how to do data analysis, how to understand population distributions, how to think about we need to understand how many people are being born every year. That's going to have an impact on what we need in the school system and what we need for healthcare, and then what are the dynamics within those institutions. So if you really want to understand how can we really understand the complexity of the world and then build better systems and structures and institutions, sociology is the discipline for you.
Really?
Yeah. It's great training for this job. So when you ask what kind of careers can you have, it's an incredible major if you want to get into government or politics, because you learn how to think in ways that allow you to ask the right kinds of questions and have the right kinds of critiques to really move the conversation forward. What I see around here often is we're stuck in these old ways of thinking about things. And it's like, I have this idea. And I'm like, well, I think both of you are wrong. What if we had another way of thinking about things?
Yeah.
What if we added we would call it a structural analysis to really understand that there's probably something else going on here, that if we could get there, we might open up new ways of thinking about the issues.
You had mentioned that you had a class that you taught. It was something about community. What was that?
Yeah. Sociology of community.
And can you go into that just a little bit? I'm curious about that.
I would love to. It was really one of my favorite classes. So the idea there is that, as social beings, humans have historically, we've always kind of lived in and grown up in community with others. But over the last few decades, we've seen a significant decline in people's awareness of the importance of social connections and our ability to make those connections and have strong connections. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. It's not just technology, but that's a big part of the story. And so as social connections decline, there are huge implications. And one of them is that we forget how to trust each other and how to work together. And it's a real threat to democracy. So if we don't have trust, democracy is very, very difficult to do well. And we need to build back those muscles of community where we don't have to agree with each other, but we're not going to hate each other just because we disagree, and when we play on the same softball league and we have different politics, at least we have that opportunity to realize oh yeah, I don't agree with you. And sometimes I think you're kind of annoying, but you're not a bad person, and so that decline of community has had huge consequences that we often don't appreciate. And so what my class was about was helping young people really learn that, understand it, and then build skills so that they can learn how to build their community in their own lives.
I'm glad you brought that last part up, because I was just thinking, so you can identify the problem, but how do we fix it?
Yeah, and you won't be able to fix it unless you understand what's going on. So first you have to,
Aware, right?
So you got to learn what is it? Why does it matter? How did this happen? And then what are the solutions? And so really basic things. Like in that class, I had students do community engagement, which was volunteering. And they would be like, oh, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I'm too busy. But once they started doing it, they would make time for it because it turned out to be the most fulfilling part of their week. And then they realized, oh my God, I have all this time when I'm prioritizing this thing, connecting to others or doing service for others. And then it changed their relationship to their place, themselves, because they had more purpose and meaning when they're helping other people and not just focused on, themselves. And getting them out of their rooms and off their phones, like think about when we were young, when Spaceballs was popular, the good old days, like we weren't staying in our rooms by ourselves. I was outside. I got in trouble every night because I came home too late when I was a kid because I was riding my bike and out with friends on, playing whatever. And that's just not the way it is anymore. And it's not just nostalgia. Like it would be easy to be like, oh, kids these days, but it's adults do it too. Where we stop connecting because we start scrolling, and before you know it, the day is over and it's time for another day, and we've lost our capacity to connect.
I didn't set it up this way, but I think both my phone, I think even my laptop too, I think it's on Sundays. All of a sudden I just get this report about my time on the screen, and I don't, like I looked at it once, but now I just dismiss. I don't know how to turn it off. Like I wish it wouldn't show me. I'm like, no, I don't want to know how much time I've been on it. It's a horrible.
iPhones do that. I think it's Apple's little way of being like, no, we care. I'm like, no, you don't.
No, you don't. Wait, we have a question here from Carol. Brad asks, since sociology is your forte, what's your solution to homelessness living on the streets? There you go. Would you solve homelessness for us, please?
Sure. Let me just do that right now. Well, the first question is, well, how did we get here? And we know something has changed because the situation has gotten way worse recently. And we know it's not limited to one community. We're seeing it in lots of different municipalities. So what's going on? A couple of different things. One, we used to treat homelessness very different. We had options. We had shelters. We had different opportunities to house people because we didn't treat everything like a single family home is the only option. We've really changed our housing policy over the last few decades. And a lot of people don't realize this, but when you see how much housing prices have gone up, that's a product of supply not keeping up with demand. And so those pressures put pressures on everyone up and down the housing spectrum. And where you see it most visibly is when people are out on the streets. And so that's a big part of the problem. I mean, the opioid epidemic definitely contributes to that. But people who have studied the issue say that, like, yes, that is a contributor. But the core issue is that we have a massive housing problem in this country, and we have to solve for that. And there's ways to do that. I mean, this is about policy. It's not like it's inevitable, but there are so many forces that are making that difficult.
Such as?
So zoning policy is one.
Yes. You're speaking my lingo. Please, preach. Yes.
We have these rules that keep us from doing pretty logical things. And those rules are defended by powerful interests. Some people make a lot of money when the housing market is tight because prices go up. And who makes money when prices go up on housing? That's a very powerful lobby. And it's a very powerful lobby in this state. So that's one place that we see. And we just last week, we had a whole slew of housing bills. And one of the cool things about housing is it's one of the most bipartisan areas you'll see because Republicans know it, Democrats know it, and we both want to solve it. And the members, like the legislators, we will come up with solutions. There were bills last week, and some of them were I was surprised. I was like, oh, this would be awesome. It was even on the calendar. Like, oh my gosh, we're actually going to vote on this. But we didn't actually vote on it.
Why?
And it's because, well, somebody told someone, you're not going to vote on that one. And that's probably where the powerful interests come in. And what that bill in particular would have done is it would have required municipalities. If you have a plot of land that you own, you get to put an accessory dwelling unit on there. So if you want to put a small house on there or a tiny home or a mother-in-law apartment or whatever, you get to do that and the city can't tell you no.
Love it.
Love it, right? That was a Republican bill. Democrats supported it. We were all on board. It was on the calendar. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get this through. Nope. We didn't vote on it.
Who?
Somebody told
So
someone
did
not.
so uh kind of the how does that work? Who sets the calendar? So you said it was on the calendar, but it never went to the vote. Who sets that?
Whoever's in charge. So in this, the majority party,
Got
and
it.
then whoever's the majority, there's leadership, and leadership
Sure.
determines what happens.
Okay, we'll gloss over that, so we don't get too far into the weeds on that one. But that's a little silly.
Yeah.
So let's go back. You were at the and by the way, you have to come back on and talk more about housing and how that impacts so many. I mean, it has such a massive impact on so many other things. And you're 100% right, including things like zoning, in our workforce, our economy. I mean, there's so many things that impacts. We should do like a whole freaking show just on that. But
I can
again,
talk about anything. The beauty of being a sociologist, I can talk about anything, whatever you want.
love it. So let's keep going though. So you were at the what was it called? The Northland College, Northland,
Northland College, yeah.
Northland
hmm
College. Um, then you decided to run for office, or was there something in between?
No. So Northland has closed, but there was an economic crisis in 2020, I guess three now. My dates get all confused. And I was really involved in trying to help figure something out there. But when it became clear that we weren't going to change path and the status quo was going to remain, it seemed pretty obvious to me that it wasn't going to stay open. And so I'm committed to my community. I'm never leaving. Like I cannot tell you, when I fell in love with that place, I'm like, I am done. This is it. I had a lifetime commitment. So how can I stay in this place I love, where getting a job that uses my skills might be challenging? And it was April of, I guess it was 2024. And so that was the first time I noticed we had new maps, you
Right.
know, new assembly maps. And when I saw the shape of it, I was like, this district is beautiful. It runs from Superior to Bad River, almost the entire south shore of Lake Superior. And what that meant is like, I can run and just be myself. Like, I have lots of ideas about the world. I've been studying this stuff for a very long time. I think I know what will resonate with people. I think I know what this district needs, and I think I have the skills for it. So, what better way to serve your community than to try to help solve problems? So, I decided to run.
Well, we will get into that. Your decision to run and your time in office. We'll do all that in 15 seconds after a word from Spooner Health.
Compassion is at the center of everything we do. It's rooted in who we are and why we're here. It unites us as providers, neighbors, and as a community. Learn more at spoonerhealth.com.
All right. So speaking of the election, I went back to look. You won by 17 points in that election. That's considered a landslide. Well, there's no like actual point percentage, but pretty much 10 points or more is kind of genuinely considered to be a landslide. Now, granted, it is more of after the maps got redone, it is more of a blue district. But let's go back to the why did you decide to run? So you said it was in April, you saw the maps are different, you're like, wow, this is great. Did you have to get talked into it? Was it a long process? Did you talk to your significant other? What was that process like?
I didn't have to get talked into it. So backing up a little bit, I was already feeling a little professionally restless, even though I was in my dream job. I was studying the dynamics that are pulling us apart politically, and it was depressing. I mean, like what
Yeah.
people were saying, kind of giving up on democracy. That's what I was hearing time and time again. And what I was studying is guns. My background is as a gun researcher. And so people were turning to guns in a moment where they're feeling like democracy doesn't work. And I was like, this is not good. So what we need is people who others can believe in. We need democracy has to work. It is the only option. Like every other political system is about power being concentrated. Democracy gives us, theoretically, a voice and a vote, and that is power. Obviously it's strained, and obviously there are dynamics that are broken, but we have to fix that. We can't give up on it. And so I've always really engaged politically in my head. Like I would listen to interviews and I would be debating the people, and I'm like, why did you say this? Why did you say that? So I knew I would always run for office someday, but I loved my job. I was hoping I'd be like years down the line. But it was pretty clear, like, okay,
It was
I
all
need to
lining
fight.
up.
It was lining up. And so I made the decision. I started talking to some friends, talking to people with experience, and I basically made the decision in like 4 days.
And you're all in 4 days.
All in. All in. I mean, I was just like, all right, let's do it. Let's see what happens.
Did you have a primary?
I did.
How did that end up? Because I didn't see that part. I didn't look at that part this morning.
I got 80% of the vote.
Okay. Because that's kind of a primary. The 73rd is now kind of a primary, and kind of like the same thing after the maps got done. And I'm sure, like, overall, it's, cumulatively, it's quote unquote more fair. But in Northwest Wisconsin, like the 73rd really should be a Democrat seat. It's going to be a kind of a primary thing. Now, you never want to jinx it. You never really know. It's still comes down to the candidate. Absolutely, it always does. 74th is 75th. These are going to be red seats. The primary is basically that's the big one, right? Whoever wins that primary in some of these seats in our area in Northwest Wisconsin, that's probably who's going to win the general election.
I mean, depending on how you cut things up, because like Douglas County, Bayfield County, Ashland County, they always go blue.
Yep.
So depending on how you cut the districts, you could either have 2 blue seats or 1, depending on how it's divided up. Because historically, it was a blue area. Once you go a little farther south, it gets redder, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you so 80% in the primary, and then you won by 17 points in the general. So you take office January 6th of this year, 2025. If Angela Stroud today, October 16th, 2025, could go back and whisper something into Angela Stroud January 6th, 2025, one piece of advice, something that you have learned and like, boy, I really wish I would have known this, what would you tell yourself on January 6th?
Probably don't take yourself so seriously.
What do you mean?
I like the night before inauguration, I didn't sleep at all. Like I was so like, oh my God, this is so like such a huge deal. And like this transition, it was stressful. And there have been times, early on, especially where I was so stressed out. Like there were issues we were dealing with in Superior around lead lines, and there were other issues around Northland's campus. And I was just so stressed. And 9 months in, I'm like, okay, this job is stressful. Do not get me wrong, but it's going to be stressful. And if you want to survive, you've got to be like ready for the long haul. And you can't, I'm only one person, and I will, my constituents will tell you, I will work hard. I will do my best. I always show up. I'm always reading everything I can read, trying to understand everything, but I'm just one person, and I can't single-handedly fix every single problem that exists. And so take a breather, relax. If you want to be in this for the long haul, you need to recognize that this is a team sport, and you're not going to do it alone.
Before you got into office and you looked at politicians, I'm sure you and we all probably have perceptions about that. But now that you have been in that role, are there any misconceptions, or I'm sure there are? What are some of the misconceptions that citizens have about politicians, legislators in Madison?
I would say the number one thing that I think is mythology is that politicians are corrupt. I 100% believe that some of them are. There's no doubt, especially at the federal level, and especially the more power you have. That is definitely something that we all need to be attentive to. But one of the things that troubles me about that mythology is that it normalizes it, actually, by saying oh, all politicians are corrupt. It creates a permission structure where it says oh, that's normal to be corrupt. No, not only is it not normal, I don't think my colleagues in the assembly are corrupt. By and large, there might be some, but the vast majority of people are genuinely here because they want to help their communities. And we should stop normalizing corruption, and instead we should recognize that when it's there, and it is there, don't get me wrong, at the highest levels especially, that is wrong. And we should never tolerate it or accept it or normalize it, because that is corrosive to democracy. Again, trust and the ability to have our voices matter. That's what we should be protecting completely, and recognize how sacred that is. And so corruption exists. It's not the rank and file, and we need to root it out. But it's not the common experience.
When you say there may be some, it's just inevitable. Of course, you're going to have some that are corrupt. When you say corrupt, what are you saying? In what capacity?
I'm saying people who are personally profiting and benefiting from their position of influence.
Sure. So in your 9-10 months there, what has been your proudest moment so far?
The lead line situation in Superior. So
Right.
that was it got very political. But my whole time with that issue, what I was trying to do is, it's pretty basic. If we're going to give a private company access to public money, the public better get a huge benefit out of that. And so what we did was we negotiated a deal. And now there are 700 or 800 people in Superior who are going to get their lead lines replaced for free, when before the average price was going to be $2,500 each. And, we received messages from people who were like, I cannot thank you enough. I can't afford that. $2,500 is a lot of money. And so to go from the average bill for customers being $2,500 to zero, because we were able to work hard and get a deal and negotiate that between the city and the utility. I mean, that feels really good. And for political reasons, it almost blew up a few times, but we navigated it, and I'm proud of that one.
Well, that's interesting because I remember. So Senator Quinn comes on a show once a month because he covers like a large portion of our area. And I remember him talking about it quite a bit, and he was all for it. And at no point do I recall, maybe he did, to recall it being like this was a political issue. I mean, I know there was a lot of concern, but I thought that was more like citizens, and I never really understood why. So how did that become political? Because it seemed like a no-brainer.
Um, you'd have to ask him what was going on for real behind the scenes. I think that there was misperceptions about what people were trying to do,
Oh,
and the whole time I was like, "Can we just talk?" Like, I promise I'm not. I that was my request the whole time, is if we could talk, then maybe we could clear some things up, and we could build trust, and then we could realize what's going on here. But that during that whole time, I could never get anybody on the phone who'd be willing to talk about it, and as a result, it was impossible to clear up misperceptions. And I'm new. Maybe they would have not trusted me anyway. But like, I don't play those games. I'm really just trying to get solutions.
yeah. Is that? Have you learned of any? Because I just assume there is. Like, there's unwritten rules in everything. Like, baseball's my favorite sport, and there's so many unwritten rules. It's not even funny. Are there unwritten rules that you're learning about in Madison? Maybe it's even okay. So I'm just totally making this scenario up. You as a Democrat assembly, you just can't call Speaker Voss and set up a meeting and go talk to him about something because your Democrat colleagues would be like, you can't do that, or like it's not a law or anything, but it's like and I know that's not a real scenario, but are there unwritten rules that you kind of had to learn that, oh, that's how that works? That's stupid, but okay.
Yeah, and there's probably many that I still haven't learned. But one of them I think, is when people think that you're going to run against them, then they're like worried. And so
Sure.
I think that there's always a perception that everybody's always going to try to go for someone else's seat. They're going to try to take you out. They're going to try to. And I feel like that dynamic puts a lot of people on edge and makes them defensive and worried. And, I'm sticking in the 73rd Assembly seat. I'm representing those people as well as I possibly can. And so I try to make things as apolitical, as non-political as possible, but that's really hard because this building, this world, everybody thinks through the lens of elections. And my view is, do a good job. That'll take care of itself. I worked very hard in my election. You can tell with the results. So I'm not saying I'm not going to work hard to campaign, but I'm not going to do it by being duplicitous or trying to get away with something. Like, get results for people. That's what we're sent here to do. And then, the 73rd is blue, but there's a lot of people who don't really care about political labels. It's not
Mm.
that partisan, actually. People want results more than anything else.
If you could wave your magic wand for a day, what's one thing that you would change? Not like a law, or certainly not the Constitution, Wisconsin or federal Constitution. If there's one thing that you could just change in Madison or amongst the legislature, what would it be that you think that would just make everything better?
Well, there's the political side, which I think maybe that's where your question's coming from.
Could be.
I mean, so on the political side, I think, if we could have a nonpartisan map drawing system,
That would be nice.
yeah, I mean, it's obvious. And right now, with all this gerrymandering at the national level, and our congressional maps are gerrymandered, we're a 50-50 state. And we have 8 congressional representatives and only 2 are Democrats. That's because these maps are just not cut right. They're cut for people to have an advantage, and it's just wrong. And it makes people not believe in the system. And what's happening at the federal level with trying to find more seats, it's just wrong. And I'm a Democrat, so I feel like, well, if the other side's doing it, we have to fight back. Like, that's required. My hope, though, is in this moment, people are going to get so angry with this and so fed up. Maybe it's time for a constitutional amendment to get rid of, partisan gerrymandering is unconstitutional. Let's have nonpartisan. This is like the highest and best use of AI. Like, okay, ChatGPT, draw me some nonpartisan fair maps that would promote democracy. Because it's very corrosive to democracy when you pick your voters. You don't then have to be accountable in the same kind of way. The voters are supposed to pick us, not the other way around. That's the political side. On the policy side, if I could change one thing, public school funding. It is, I think, one of the most consequential issues in this state, because almost all of our kids go to public schools. It's our biggest employer across the state. And if you own property or you rent, you are paying for the consequences of our inability to fix public schools, because property taxes are going to keep going up because we're not funding it correctly.
Well, we used to do a show with the Barron County Sheriff, Chris Fitzgerald, until he retired from being the sheriff. And I would ask him about this, similar along these lines regarding money. And this was after the George Floyd, and it was, cops, everybody didn't like cops all of a sudden. And then people weren't going into the profession. And I remember asking him, and even another sheriff, I think Tracy Finch over in Burnett County, and I think even Brent Walk in Polk County, asked him the same question of, is the answer just paying them more? Is throwing money at it going to get more law enforcement? And all their answers were, not really. That's not going to actually solve what the real problem is. And then there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. So when it comes to school funding, is it that simple? We just want to dump more money into it. Is that it? Like, wow, put more money into it, done.
Yeah, no. So when it comes to school funding, my argument isn't just about putting more money in. It's where's the money coming from? Mm-hmm. We've got to solve for that problem, because right now we have restructured school financing basically in the state, where the state element is shrinking and the property tax part of that is growing. So property taxes are making up more and more and more of it. So it looks to us like, oh, why do we just keep putting more money in and getting the same or worse results? We're not putting more money in. We're putting less money in, but more of it's coming off our backs and less of it's coming from the state. And so that's issue number one. Issue number two is, I often say, like, putting more money into it to solve a problem isn't going to solve the problem unless your problem is that you don't have enough money. And when it comes to schools, it's not like policing, where budgets have grown and we've tried to use more and more money to recruit and retain employees. It's actually the opposite. Budgets have been shrinking over time. Again, you wouldn't know that because your property taxes are going up, so you think we're giving them more. Budgets are shrinking over time, and we're making the issue in schools actually much worse as a result of that, because kids' needs actually have grown, post-COVID especially. And so how are we going to solve for that? To me, one of the biggest things is we've got to restructure the funding formula. There are many other things, but it's the formula that's broken, and it's hurting communities. And it's going to hurt communities this year in a major way. When you see your property taxes, you're going to look at that and you're going to think, oh my God, what's my school district doing? It's not your school district. It's the state legislature.
And are your Democrat colleagues on board with that as well? And are any Republicans on board with this as well? Is this being discussed, what you had just suggested?
Yeah. So there are people who are working on redoing the funding formula.
Good.
It's super political, and people on different sides. Weird, right? People, I don't think this is one that lines up really neatly. Like, Democrats think this, Republicans think that. I think people like me who represent rural areas have a lot in common on this. And so I think if we can somehow, some way, not think about this just as a partisan issue, but instead, like, this is an issue. How are we going to solve this problem? I think there's going to be opportunity for much more creative thinking.
What about term limits? Where are you on term limits?
I've had mixed feelings about term limits. It kind of depends on, like, what is the limit and for which office. I think for executive positions like governor and president, term limits make sense because that's like so much consolidated power, So, and it's 8 years, like 4 years, 2 4-year terms makes a lot of sense. Even at the legislative level, I'd be totally willing to entertain that. But what's the right number? Because as you said, like in the first year, you're just figuring it
And
out.
the second year, you're campaigning.
Yeah,
It's like, I don't know what I'm
exactly.
doing yet.
So what is
I,
it? Is it 10 years? Is that too long? I
I
don't
don't
know what
know.
the number is.
Representative Duke Tucker, he was on with Emily Gall and I a couple of weeks ago on the show, and he had a bill that he's out. He's like, he only has one other person interested, like nobody else will even sign on to it. And it was for state level. So not like counties, like county boards, sheriffs, etc. This is just for state governors and legislators, essentially. And of course, I don't remember if Attorney General was in there or not, but the state treasurer, etc., whatever. And essentially, it just came down to 8 years. So for Assembly, it would be a 4-term limit because it's 2 years. Senate would be a 2-term limit, but it was like 8 years and where that was. And we had a lot of conversation about it. I'm not a huge fan of it necessarily. I don't really know what problem that we're fixing for the most part. I like it like in theory, it makes sense, but I think a lot of people want that because they just don't like politicians. To be honest, I think that's what it is. Like, yeah, those people, we didn't get them out of there. Let someone know. But if you look at it in practice, I don't know. I'm a little torn on that one. I'm not a super fan of it, but I could probably be one good argument away from talking me into it. But the governor's level, yeah, I'd probably start there maybe, but not
Yeah.
necessarily go down any further.
I mean, you know, I'm with you. Like I could be like if the evidence is compelling, I'm open minded to it. I'm not like a hard no.
Yeah.
Definitely not a hard no. 8 years for what we do seems pretty short, just because like it does take so long to figure out this job, and I think people should recognize like there is a revolving door between what happens in the Capitol and lobbying. So don't think you're going to fix the
No,
problem.
and that's another big problem I have with it is where's that power going to be placed? It's going to be in a vacuum there, and it's going to be bureaucrats, and it's going to be lobbyists even more. Like if we can put term limits on bureaucrats, that'd be fantastic. Like if we're doing it at the same time, right? I mean that would be okay. A little more open to it now, but again, I don't think it necessarily is fixing a problem, and I think it's maybe creating some other ones. So I
Yeah.
think of like on the top 10 list of here's what I want to get done. I don't think that would be in my top 10 list if I was running or if I was in the assembly. I don't think it would be on that. I think there's a lot of
I
other
think
issues.
money in politics is way more of a problem than term limits. It's way more. And again, it's not because we're corrupt. Like that's not where it happens. It happens at the top with our leadership dynamics and controlling elections. So it's definitely not. I wouldn't focus on term limits. I would focus on getting money out of politics. I think that that is a much stronger thing. And again, I'm willing to revisit the term limits thing because I'm where you are on that one.
Yeah. Speaking of elections, are you running? Are you running for re-election in the 73rd, or are you going to make an announcement, or when are you going to decide if you are or aren't? I'm assuming that you
I,
are.
I'm running for re-election in the 73rd. Yeah, I haven't even thought about that. Do you have to make an announcement when you're an incumbent and you plan to run again? I guess you do. I don't
I don't
know. Let
know.
me make it here. Let me break news for you
Yeah,
here on
there
your
you
show.
go. Yeah. Now I think about it, I think we've had a few, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's
Yeah, I
just
don't
kind
know.
of people figured out at some point or something. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
All right, so you've had a lot going on now that you're back in session. I see Wisconsin news over this week. A lot of things getting done. What has been bills this week that you have been a part of, either yes or no, that you want to make sure that you let everybody know what's going on?
I mean, on the bills level, there wasn't a whole lot this week that I'm
Oh,
deeply engaged in.
oh,
There
okay.
were there were like crime things that people were bringing up. It's amazing when with an entrenched legislature like we have, it seems like the one thing that people are willing to talk about is sort of like tinkering around the edges of crime statute, which is, I'm not saying that these things are not useful or needed. Some of them are, and I'm willing to, put my vote behind some of them. But I wish we were dealing with bigger picture things. I wish we were dealing with the school funding issue, which is such an enormous problem. I saw in a comment someone asked, where's the money going? If our property taxes keep going up, again, it's important to remember property taxes are going up because the amount that the state puts in keeps dropping. So the net amount going into schools is still going down, but that's because where it's coming from is shifting. That is a huge problem. Like we are in this state dealing with extreme constraints at the level of our households, like affordability crisis. Like we cannot afford to have housing continue to go up. In Ashland County, housing has more than doubled in 5 years. Incomes haven't doubled. Like, how are people supposed to afford that? And at the same time, you have groceries going up and you have utility bills going up. Like, this is not, we have an affordability crisis. And so I wish we were more squarely concerned about those things. And that's what we're working on in my office, is trying to figure out how do we make things more affordable for people. And that's a big picture conversation. I mean, that's complex. That's not something we could just like swoop in and here's a bunch of ideas. We're taking our time trying to figure out how to do that right.
When Evers did the line item veto, that 400-year thing, did that help or hurt?
I think, what he was trying to do was all these school districts are having to go to referendum. And so as they go to referendum, that's hard. I mean, only half of referenda pass in any given year. And so this was a way to increase per pupil revenues. In my view, it's not the best way to do it because it puts it on property taxes. It's not about general purpose revenue. It's not coming out of the state's portion of that. I would be fine getting rid of that. I think that that's something that we should talk about. I think that when you have a legislature that is really not funding public schools, the governor is going to use the tools that he has available, and I feel like, but sometimes if you use the tool you have available, but it doesn't actually fundamentally help, then we're back at square one or worse. But I put that on both parties because, like, what do you do when your hands are tied and we're not funding schools adequately? You do what you think you can to help, but is it the solution? It's definitely not the solution. I think that we should start over.
So now that you're how long are you in session for this year? Is it just now from now until, I don't know, next June or May or something? Or is it, obviously they're going to have like a winter break, right?
Yeah.
How does that work?
I mean, we have one session in November, a week in November. December's off. And then I have my calendar here. As I'm just learning this job, I'm always like, what are we doing? A couple weeks in January, a couple weeks in February. But I've heard we're probably not going to meet much. The Senate doesn't really want to meet much on the Republican side. And so I think people are going to start campaigning early because there's going to be so many elections this year that are really consequential, which, it's unfortunate. We get paid not to run for office. We get paid to do the people's work. So I wish we would get more done here.
I think everybody, whether that's realistic or not, I don't know. But I think most people would agree with that.
I think it's realistic. I mean,
go down there and pass bills. Do something. I don't know. Make a bill up. I don't care. Just do something.
Just this week, I had someone tell me, they were like, I've been in this building for 30 years. And they said, you are like a throwback. You're someone who's in here trying to use logic because you actually want to get things done.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't use logic.
Well, I refuse to change. Either I will help be positive change in this building, or I'll go do something else. I don't need to do this. I'm here to help, and so I'm going to do my best, and I'll stick around as long as I can to try to, as long as the voters want me, to try to push things in a direction that improves people's lives. And let's see if we can do that. Crazy idea, right? Like that's what we're elected to do.
You're in Madison now then?
I am. I'm going to Superior today.
So what's on the docket today? Anything, or is it just wrapping up a couple of meetings with staff and then heading back home?
That's it. Wrapping up a couple of meetings. I have lots of phone calls on my drive. I have the great fortune of having the longest drive.
You're I was going to say, I think you're the furthest away.
I am definitely the furthest away.
And
tonight I go to Superior.
What is it? 5 hours?
5 hours. Yeah. 5
hours. Ridiculous.
Well, as I always say, like if it takes 5 hours to live in the best place in the world, I'm going to take it. I would never want to live in Madison. No offense to Madisonians, but it's not my lifestyle.
I mean, have you guys heard of Zoom? It's a thing. It's a 100%. Thing. Just saying. 100%. I mean, not everything has to be in person. A lot of things do, but everything, really.
I know.
All right. What do you have? So what are you doing this weekend? What are your plans?
I'm actually going with friends to the UP to hang out in the woods for the weekend. I have this new thing where I'm going to try to go camping every month. One weekend every month, I'm going to go camping, even in the winter.
Why?
I love being outside. And what I do on that, so in the winter, I'll probably go to like a yurt or a cabin. But leave my cell phone behind. My staffer has my partner's cell phone if there's an emergency, but I'm not the center of the universe. There's emergencies I probably don't need to be involved in, but if there was one, they can get a hold of me.
Do you sleep in a tent when it's nice? Is it like tent camping, not the winter part, or is
not
it
in the
like a camper?
We have a pop-up camper.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just love being outside. Like it's just so good, and being away from my phone and off of the internet. I recommend it to everybody.
I do that. I take my Sabbath day. I'm a man of faith, and I take my Sabbath day as that. It's usually on Saturdays. Sometimes I have to work on Saturdays, so then it turns into Sunday. But usually it's Saturdays, and that's my Sabbath day. It's I turn my phone on Do Not Disturb, but you can set it like you still have family can call, like if there's an emergency or something. Plus, they can get a hold of Jerusha, my wife. She always has her phone. But I'm not kidding. It's huge. I don't turn my computers on. I just watch sports. I do some work in the garage. And it's been a game changer for me. I started about 2 years ago, and taking just that one day off and unplugging from just the world and social media. Oh my goodness, it's amazing. It just fills my cup again and just recharges me.
100%. Like this 24/7 negativity bombardment is just not healthy, and it's not normal. Like we were not wired for this. We were wired for a much slower, different kind of pace of life. And I think that's why we're seeing so much dysfunction.
Speaking of that, I saw a question in a video, a Facebook reel the other day, and I've never heard this question put this way before. What is more important, to have a positive attitude or to not have a negative attitude? And I'm not necessarily asking you, it's just more of something, just like a deep thought kind of a thing. But I'm really going around and around on that one ever since I saw it yesterday. Like, what is more important, to have a positive attitude or to not have a negative? And according to this study, it's not to have a negative attitude. Because if you look around, like the negativity is just so much and it impacts you more. But I don't know. I've been thinking about it a lot. Do you have any initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the idea of having a positive attitude is like we'd be tempted to force it. Like I have to force being positive. And like that's unrealistic. Like the absence of focusing on negativity is a win. And sometimes there's just something neutral where you're not like, I'm not necessarily positive, but I'm content. And I think being content is a much better goal than like, I feel joy. Like, don't force that, because then you're going to fake it. And that's the worst, when you see people faking it. You're like, oh, there's something seriously wrong. You need to chill out a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything that you wanted to make sure that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
I mean, seriously, I love talking about all this stuff. It's super interesting and fun to me. And I appreciate the question. So, how about we just have me back and I will talk about whatever you want, whenever you want.
That's fantastic. We're totally doing that. Awesome. Hey, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right. Special thank you to Wisconsin's 73rd Assembly District Representative Angela Stroud for taking the time to come on for a chat today. I'll see all of you next Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. when I'll be joined by, I think it's Washington County Executive and Republican candidate for Wisconsin Governor Josh Schoeman. So until then, thank you for watching and have a blessed day.